The other point I wanted to make is that it's not necessarily not time bound, but it's not necessarily when you want the answer to happen, is not necessarily when it's going to happen. So we're used to communication with other people being like, we ask them a question and then they respond, and it's in very sort of real linear time kind of sense. But with communication with nature, it's not necessarily going to happen when we demand it to. And quite often it will be once we've totally released the intention to get a response, once we've let go of the expectation of getting the answer, is when something might come through. And that might be 5 minutes after, that could be, later that night during our dreams, or it could be, at some other point in time that when we least expect it. And it might be, communication could be a very specific question. Communication, in the context of a vision quest, communication is really about you're asking to receive guidance about the purpose in your life. So it could be really big picture inspiration. Communication could also be just gentle guidance of, where you need to be. And particularly when it gets down to assistance for ourselves personally, communication could even be, just come over here and sit on this rock for a little while. Or it could be, look at the colors on this flower, and that could be exactly what we need in that moment. And we're not trying to make anything of it, but then we might receive some insight as to, why we needed that particular kind of quality of energy. So it can also be insight as well as sort of specific answers. So we're gonna do a paired question exercise, meaning someone is going to give you one of their questions, and then you're going to go and get the answer for somebody else. So before we begin that, everybody just take a moment to write down either specific questions that you have, things that you would like guidance on. It could be, for yourself personally, but it also could be about, challenges that you're facing in your work. So the question could be of really any nature. But when you frame the question, when you word it, there's definitely a trick to that, meaning that you probably want to practice with more than just yes or no answers. Those can be the simplest, but is not necessarily how you're going to learn the most at this point in time. So try to work with questions, especially for this afternoon, questions that have some openness to them, so that you can be receiving even more information from nature than you think you didn't realize that you needed. So we don't want the questions to be so vague that the person your partner could go out and get an answer and come back and tell you anything and it would kind of fit the question. We want that sort of just right kind of zone of not too specific, black and white, yes or no, and then not too way open and just impossible to get any kind of really useful answer. If you're really stuck for exactly how to word a question, a good tip is to just ask, what do I need to know right now about this particular situation, is one just useful way of going about it. Okay, so a couple of minutes to write down your questions that you'll share with your partner. And then when you have got your questions, find yourself a partner, and you're just going to share one of those questions with each other. Okay, so hopefully you've all got a question now from your partner. So everyone's going to go out together at the same time, and you don't have to go out to your solo side. It could be somewhere closer. And you're going to experiment with getting an answer for your partner's question using the yang approach. So what that means is you're going to go outside, find somewhere where you think you'd like to ask the question, or find a being of nature that you think you would like to, who you think you'd like to ask. And then you're going to try asking the question for your partner and try to feel into that place in your heart that makes you really want to get an answer for your partner. And then place the question into the field. So release the question and then become as still and clear as you can be. And then pay attention to all these sensory fields, including your inner vision, your mind's eye, and seeing what arises. So it might be that you're suddenly inspired by the pattern on the bark of the tree that you're looking at, and that gives you inspiration for the insight. Or it could be that something changes in nature around you that signifies a particular thing. The trick really is to not overthink it. So first impression, best impression. So yeah, my best tip is to just be as clear as possible and go with what arises immediately. And that could be in the inner or outer landscape. Okay, it doesn't look like any questions. So go forth and ask your partner's question, and then we'll all come back together and you guys will share your responses with each other. Now we're going to take another one of your questions and again, do the same thing with another partner. You could ask the same question if you want to a different person, or you could give them a different question. But this time when we go to get the answer for our partner, we're going to try the yin approach. So meaning we're not going to go to one particular spot that we think we need to go to. We're going to wait and see where we're being asked to be. So just like when you're finding your spot, it's just a matter of being open and noticing what you're sensing, what you're being called to. And when you feel like you're in the right spot or you're with the right being of nature, asking your partner's question and then seeing what comes back. Going out and asking the question should be a relatively quick kind of process. We don't, like I said, we don't want to be overthinking the responses. So I'd expect, everyone comes back within about 5 minutes or so. Different partners, if you want, it's up to you if you want a different partner to give you a slightly, you could get a second opinion if you want to. The purpose is more for, you guys to be practicing asking and receiving responses rather than, I know there's a lot of value that will come out of the answers, but it's up to you if you want to ask the same question or a different question. So I would love to hear from you guys. So you've just practiced twice with asking a question for somebody else. So I'd love to hear from people sharing about both as actually, maybe we can start to begin with. I'd love to hear from someone about their experience being the asker of the question. How easy was it for you to get some information for your partner? And what techniques did you try? How did you receive the communication?
For me, the experience for both is like, I find it easier to find an answer for somebody else other than myself. Yeah, because I got an immediate response after I finish. Before I ask the question, I asked permission to sit there or to be there, and then I ask it verbally. So like, I will ask like, okay, Mother Nature, can I have a question like this, like this? Katrina, I have a question like this, like this. And then after I finish reading the question, I got the immediate response or kind of sign that I need to like, oh, maybe this is the question, the science, or anything to do with the questions. Yeah. But
What sort of
yeah,
sign?
for Ken, after I finished reading the question, I immediately saw dragonfly because Ken is so in love with dragonfly. So yeah, I saw it. And then with Katrina's question, I asked twice just to make sure in the length of like 3 minutes apart. So at first I asked, there's a strong wind blowing, and then I asked second time also the same sign also. So yeah, that's my experience lah. I got the immediate response, and easier to find another person's questions rather than my questions myself.
Yes. Always the way. Somebody else?
So, experience as the asker. So I asked for both Enru and Ken. So both of these, both times, I'm trying to feel for an answer. And what I feel is that there was no response. It's just the way it is. Nature is just the way it is. Precisely because it was this question. I mean, it was because it's their question, and it's a sacred relationship between them and nature. So I do not get a definite answer, but what I feel like is that maybe they should feel for themselves, because everyone feels differently. How you feel or how you think, you might perceive different things, and me being another person asking on their behalf, I might have limited perception as to what they can perceive. So that was the experience.
Very true. You are unlikely to get the same response or the same answer to a question that they would get themselves. But that's also why it's kind of like, in nature, everything's playing on a team together. And that's why, I mean, in my shamanic healing practice, it's sometimes a similar kind of question that comes up of like, is it the person should be healing their own selves in this way? And we do some divination, like asking questions on behalf of somebody else. But my perspective on it is that, if someone's asked you to ask a question for them, they're also giving you permission. And like other people have been sharing, it's often easier for someone else to get a clearer, unbiased answer for somebody else. So it's kind of like you're not taking away somebody else's power or responsibility to solve their own problems, but we're working as a team together to help everybody grow and be their best and solve their challenges. So remain open to, that you don't necessarily need to feel like you need to give them the best answer, but it definitely is helpful for people to hear what someone else might get for them. And I mean, perhaps it doesn't go without saying, but obviously when we're sharing answers with everybody else, we're not necessarily taking it as this is the exact meaning or the exact response, because it's very difficult to interpret what anything means. So when someone shares with you, I saw this and this is what I think it meant, to the person receiving it, they might go, you saw that, that's really significant. But they might actually do their own interpretation of what that might have meant. And they can take what resonates with them, what feels like it's useful and what doesn't. So keep, giving it a go. And also keep in mind that, in this context, we're practicing asking another person's question, but in a different context, it might be, whatever project you're working on, you might be asking a question about, what you can do to help in this particular issue. So in a sense, it's not asking for yourself, it is asking for others, but, things get less kind of cut and dry when there's multiple people and multiple beings involved. So yeah, embrace your opportunities to practice when it's a little simpler, when it's just two people involved. And in terms of as a receiver of the responses for your own question, maybe because I can see most people in the room, did you feel like you got a useful response? Was the information something that's going to help you with that question or that challenge? Which is pretty amazing considering, this is, for many people, it's their first time practicing something like this. And yeah, it can seem like so simple. And of course, this is something quite natural and everyone can step in and do it for each other. I know I definitely find it's a constant struggle for me to even remember that all of this is possible. It's like, sometimes it takes me however long to realize, oh, I could just ask. I could just ask either someone else for help. I could ask nature for help. I could use my own practices, because I think we're so used to thinking that things like this are, maybe not possible, or we're going to get it wrong and we're not going to get something useful. But, we can see just around the room here, just from your first efforts, that that's not necessarily the case. In fact, I was going to share with you my own story, what I'm drinking now. So when you guys were off asking your questions, I thought, I was sort of like, oh, I feel like I would like to participate in this. And I was like, oh, but I don't really have a particular question that I need to ask right now. And then I went, oh, but I guess what I would like is some guidance, because my stomach has been feeling a bit upset. And then immediately I realized that my eyes were resting on a red gum tree. So it's a type of eucalypt that has this red, like blood colored sap. It's extremely astringent, but I know that it was traditionally used for upset stomachs. So straight away I had my answer of like, oh yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. So it can just be in the simple, like, remembering that you can actually ask. And that opens up the ability to, just even see what's around you. So I'm attempting to drink some not very pleasant tasting dissolved tree sap right now. But yeah, that's just one of the simple ways that communication with nature can help you. So we're going to move into your second solo for today. So again, the theme is, of course, this communication with nature. I'm going to change it up a little bit to what I've got in your workbook there. So it's asking you to practice with asking a personal question using the yin approach. I kind of realized there's sort of like a double yin approach of like, when you get to your solo site, see who you're being called to in terms of the beings of nature around you. But you're going to have the intention to find a being that has got something to share with you. And we're going to leave that something quite wide open. So you're going to find a being of nature that's calling you, that's got something to share with you. And then you're going to ask that being of nature to dream you. So I know that it's the afternoon, can see that, might be a bit of sleepiness going around. So I thought this would be the appropriate practice to do. Perfect time for a daydream or a nap. So when you find that being of nature, I really want you to take some time to appreciate it, to, notice its beauty so that the heart really opens for this being. Notice every little detail about it, go through all the experiential feels like you did this morning. What does it smell like? If you know it's safe to do so, you could even try tasting it. If you're not sure, maybe don't. See what thoughts and emotions arise as you contemplate and connect with it, and also see if you can get a feel for its energy. And give it some thanks and appreciation. And when you feel sort of settled in that connection with that being, just simply ask that that being dreams you, which pretty much means you're just going to totally let go of your own sort of perception of reality and allow the images and feelings to bubble up from that place of connection. So we want that connection through the heart with that being so that energy can come back from that being, the plant, it's most likely to be, perhaps a rock, so that it can attune you and give you information via that attunement with your energy field. So it's probably likely that it's just going to feel like your imagination, because in a way it kind of is. Like the imagination is the doorway to perception. So it's actually kind of impossible for you to know if it's your imagination or if it's a message from this being, except that it will probably feel either very right, or it might give you a very surprising response that you just know hasn't come from you. It's just not something that you would have ever thought of. So that sense of surprise will probably be present as well. So it gives you full permission to rest as much as you like, to nap, and to just allow yourself to be informed by nature in the most receptive way possible. Okay, so we'll go out to our solo sites now, and then it'll be come back together at 4:30. So yeah, obviously I'd love to hear how that solo went, and was it fruitful, this practice of asking a being of nature to dream you?
Trying to recall back on, because I didn't dream, but so I was lying down, and then on the same spot that I lie down yesterday, and then before lying down, it feels like I felt like I need to give something, so I offered them my water. And then, so when I lie down, so I didn't really recall what was my question. So like just happened, and the being that touched my head was a seed. I think it sprouted last night, and my head was beside it, and I had a recall of when I first started during like the first FS retreat, and I've been recalling like I hear a lot of like saying spiders around, and I recall this morning I saw a spider. It was black and white. I think it's the exact spider I drew last time when I said the word web sauna. So I think web sauna is I think it was an imagination of, because FS, in the center of FS, it's living landscape and also living seascape. So imagine like the biggest mammals on Earth, and also like a tiny insect on land. So it is the whale and also the spider. The spider which creates web of networks around. And how if you see in the morning, sometime here on the deck, there will be spider, I think in the night, bungee jumping from one leaf to another leaf, or doing like skydiving from one leaf to another leaf with the thread, creating a network from one leaf to another leaf, and which is hidden to like human eyes, but we can only see it when their work is already done. That's when they already network from the language from one tree to one tree, which we might not even understand. And also the whale, which use sonar to communicate even from like long distance, or knowing where there is to go. So that was the intention behind the word web sonar. And I think that's how like the first sprout was planted in me to be in FS. It's how the sonar reverberates to all the webs that was created. So it's web sonar.
Yeah, so it's just a bunch of questions that were just kind of bombarding, and I sense that I may have projected, a lot of the overwhelm, perhaps. And what was weird was that, like, with each question that was kind of like consuming me, suddenly there was like this, like there was this gust of wind that just blew, and it felt like a shush. Yeah, and it was weird. So I was like, okay. So I quieted down for a bit, and then I heard, and then birds started to sing, and I kind of got that as a message for, all these questions you have right now were probably not answered in the past because you didn't get a chance to listen. So, yeah. Yeah. And all that happened after the whole shush. And then actually in between, it was kind of like, it felt like I was being told to rest. So I kind of like laid down at the sit spot for the first time. I'd never done that. It was a bit scary for me because of, the creepy crawlies. I was like, ooh, what's gonna crawl on my skin, but yeah, that was kind of like a moment of peace. And
so we'll wrap up today here.